Okay, we are back. My name's John Mayfield, the real estate tech guy. I'll put my little graphic up there, and my apologies if you joined our live stream and had some issues going on there, but we should be good to go now. We are streaming live on Twitter, LinkedIn, both my personal Facebook page and my Global Real Estate School Facebook page. We are also streaming on our two YouTube channels, The Business Tech Guy, where I have a lot of tech tips, and our Global Real Estate School. In fact, I encourage you to be sure and sign up, especially if you're going through the real estate exam. Maybe you've already taken the real estate exam, you're a real estate professional. Go out, sign up on our YouTube channel. You can search for us at Global Real Estate School, subscribe, and as I showed you at the beginning of that little graphic, click on the bell. And that way you will be notified each and every time that we go live. And we'd like to build our YouTube channel, so we'd love to have you as a member. Well, it's snowing here in southeast Missouri. We got a lot of ice and drizzle and sleet yesterday, and overnight we had more sleet and kind of intermixed snow from time to time, but the snow really started coming down in the late hours last night, early morning hours, and it's still been snowing all day long. So we've got kind of a wild variety of things happening here. Well, I'm going to go over to the board real quick. I'm going to turn off my telephone, and one of those things I forgot to do, as Steve Martin would say, I forgot, when he was pulled over for speeding. But a couple of things I want to go over with you today. First of all, perhaps you may not be in Global Real Estate School. If not, this is what our school looks like. If you are part of our course, this is your dashboard. Now, naturally, I'm testing a lot of our courses, so I have many of the courses that are in here. I'm going to just pull up Missouri. They all pretty much work the same, except for the state you are in. You will have that specific state material, which I think is very important for you to understand and know. One of the items that I would really like for you to be familiar with as you go through the course material is the fact that this is the main course here. You'll notice, and I'm going to actually turn the camera off so you can see, but up in the and I don't have my mouse here. I guess I could put my mouse up there and you could see that. When you go up here to the home button, that's going to always bring you back here so you can click continue to my dashboard. Now, right next to the home is a tab called Content Library. You want to click on the Content Library because in each state we have specific questions, we have practice exams, we have real estate math made easy. We have all of the review modules. I'll explain that in just a moment. And then we have what are called recorded study sessions. Basically, the recorded study sessions are sessions like what I'm going to do with you today, where we just go through the material in a specific module or a chapter, and I teach those as if I'm teaching to a live classroom. In fact, I did have a student that I was mentoring and tutoring to help them pass the exam. So I did have someone in front of me as I videotaped all of those. We are updating all of those now, but they're still very good. And I tell you that because I did have a student who had two students last week, had several students write me last week and said they passed the exam on the first attempt. Had several people, unfortunately, were on this email blast we sent out to our school students telling them about today's live stream. And it was always cool when we get an email from someone that says, hey, I'm not a student anymore, I've already passed the test. We try to update those records, but they had passed the test on the first time, and they said, love the course, good job. And so we appreciate that, thank you. But I had two girls last week send me an email. And one girl told me, she said, I passed the test on my first attempt. John, there were maybe 2 questions I was concerned about. And she said, everything else was on there you talked about. And she told me what she did. And she said, I'm going to go to the the home button here, and we're just going to pretend that she was in the Missouri 48-hour course. She said I would go through the material. Now, this is the course right here when you log into your course. So there's a little student contract, there's a welcome video, course requirements. And then this is chapter 1, where you'll start moving through the course. Chapter 2, personal property, chapter 3, and so forth and so on. Now, if you close this little tab right here, this little arrow, down arrow, you'll notice that you will discover additional study materials down below. So if you look down below, there's all kinds of great material for you to go over and to preview. She told me, she said, John, here's what I did. I would go through chapter 1. After she went through chapter 1, she would come down to the study sessions and she would do the chapter 1 study session. Now, what's the difference? This is where I actually teach chapter 1 as if I'm teaching it to a live class. So you can actually go in, take the course online. So you go through chapter 1, which is where you're going to have video and audio. I just do not have text and just not text and clicking your mouse. But then what I would encourage you to do is come down and go over the study sessions. That way, it's like you're going through the course online, but then you're turning around and watching me teach that same material as if you were in a live class. She said, I did that process. I went through the review modules. Now let's talk about that. There's a method to my madness here, so I want you to pay attention with me because this is very important. She said, I would then go through the review modules. Now, what's the difference between chapter 1 review and chapter 1 in the main course? You have to understand that in the main course, the Real Estate Commission does not want students, they do not want students to be able to log in, click on the menu, go all the way to the last slide, and check out. So in other words, you don't even study, you just bypass everything. Well, you can't do that. The Real Estate Commissions want to make sure that you are taking the time to go through the course. Sometimes I have students say, you talk too much. Occasionally I hear that. They just want to speed through the course. And they'll say, you're talking too much. I've already read that and I want to go through. Well, I'm trying to give you examples. If you'll just sit back and listen and be patient, I'm trying to give examples of how you might see that material on the exam. I think that's very important. And a lot of times I keep talking because I'm trying to pull something back from a previous chapter and apply it into that specific topic. Now, again, I don't hear that a lot, but occasionally I get someone who gets a little frustrated, and I get it. They just want to zip through the course and try to go in and pass the test, and it doesn't work that way. Some of those students are the ones that normally do not pass the test. So this student told me, this girl, I went through the chapter, I went through the study session, and then I would go back through the review modules. Now the review modules are unlocked, okay? Which means, and let me show you how this works. This is called chapter 1. I call it, review or free. And there's audio with every slide. But notice here, I can just drop down and go to any specific slide that I want to go to. I'm going to turn the sound down. So if I want to just jump around, or if I want to go down to the flashcards and look at the flashcards, I can do that. If I want to go all the way down and just go into the review quiz, I can do that. So this is it's all open, and that's why we call it review modules, or the review modules. So again, this is your main course. these modules are locked. You can't move around. Right below, down below, you have the review modules. They are all unlocked. So that's what they're there for you to review, because naturally you want to go through the course and then you want to come back and try to review a little bit. And then the study sessions are me teaching that chapter that you just went through online as if I'm teaching it to students. Now, this girl tells me, I went through, I studied the material, I watched the study sessions, I went through the review modules, I used the practice exams. She said, John, I maybe saw 2 questions that I just was not 100% sure on the answers, but everything else you covered. And she said, I passed. The other person I spoke to told me, I didn't pass the test. I had a really challenging time. I don't know what I did wrong. I studied very hard, so forth and so on. Now, I went into their dashboard because I can see all of the material, what you open and what you close. That student had never opened the study sessions, had never gone into the review modules, never took any practice exams. I guess they were just studying from their own notes. And what I'm trying to tell you is this: the material's there, and if you really follow my game plan, and that's why I wanted to spend some time now going over with some of you, if some of my students are on here. And by the way, I need to try to pull up the chat box because I think I can do that. I will try that a little bit later. I think that's maybe over in my other system, but we'll take a look at that, and I'll make sure if there's any questions we can address those for you. But getting back to what I was saying is you gotta have a game plan, and you really need to study and focus hard because they design those questions to really trip you up, okay? Now, the other problem I see a lot, and by the way, this is live streaming. This is if I'm teaching in a class. So you are my students in a classroom. And sometimes when I teach this live, and have taught it live in the past, part of passing the test is understanding a little bit about how to study, what the test is like, and preparing you in that way. We are going to study some material, but I just wanted to spend this time going over that with you. And I get discouraged when I have all of these great resources there and students don't take advantage of them, and then they call or send me an email and say, what am I doing wrong, John? I can't figure it out. And so that's my only purpose for sharing that with you. But I had another student, and I've gotten a couple of emails. I get these all the time, and if you're watching, because I know some of my current students are watching, I'm not picking on you in any way, but I just forewarning you, sometimes I get very interesting emails that will try to challenge questions I have in the material, and they'll say, but what if this such and such, and they're adding all these other details to the question. And the problem you have to run into is, and I'm guilty about this myself, okay, so I want you to know that, you do not want to try to draw anything into that question. Read the question, be laser focused on what they are asking, and answer that question that way. Do not bring anything else into it. If you do that, you're going to get in trouble, and they're going to trip you up. You're going to fail the test, okay? It's just that simple. They know how to write questions to get you to say, but what if this person also did, well, that's not what they're asking you, okay? So don't try to bring too much into the question. So that's my tips, advice for you before we get started today. So I'm going to throw up a little sheet here that will remind you that at Global Real Estate School, we do have a support page, and you can go there. It's globalrealestateschoolsupport.com, and that's where you can find out more information there. So I see I have one of my friends from Bulgaria or Russia who has said something, And hello, Vicky Santana, who's watching on LinkedIn. She's down in sunny Florida. She says hi. So I do have the chat box up. Does not matter if you're on YouTube, Facebook. Vicky's on LinkedIn. If you're on Twitter, type those in. I'll come out and take a look at those chats from time to time. So thank you, Vicky. And my friend in Bulgaria, that I apologize, I'm not able to read what you're saying there. But anyway, thank you for that. All right, so let's get into the material here today. I just want to remind you about the Global Real Estate Support page because a lot of students do use that and it does help out for that. So I'm going to pull up, I'm going to go back over here to the board, and I have an interactive board I invested in. I think it's always, to me, great to add additional tools that I can, and that's not, we do not want that, so get rid of that, see if I can. I want to add a PDF document so we can go through. And let's go down here. I thought today we would talk about agency a little bit, chapter 10. That's a big area. So let me get down here. We've talked about taxes. I think we were on kind of some liens and encumbrances. I've done a little bit of that, but I want to actually kind of get into chapter 10, which is talking about agency, and you're going to see questions on the exam regarding agency. Each state has agency guidelines that you need to understand and know, so we'll insert those pages, and I'm going to come up here to the first page right here. Try to get this up so you can see it good. Hopefully you can see that. So we're going to talk a little bit about agency. What is agency? I can actually move this a little bit over this way. And I think if I add my picture in a picture, there we go, I can bring this back over. I can kind of, we'll try to get the camera over here so hopefully it will follow me over. And then I'll do a little hand gesture, and now you can hopefully see me as well as we talk on the board. I kind of think that's fun, and that way you can get the best of both worlds here. So one of the things that we learn about in real estate school is this topic called agency. What is agency? If I had you in a live class, I'd naturally have some feedback, or would want to get some feedback and ask you questions. But just as you and I talk about agency in specifics, I want you to know that an agency creates really a special obligation, and we call it a fiduciary obligation. In fact, I'm going to kind of highlight this, and one way that we can remember that is through this acronym called COLD, C-O-A-L-D. I've actually heard people refer to this as old car as well, but notice when this agency exists, certain requirements of the agent are created. Now, how do we create an agency? Well, when you get your real estate license, probably one of the things you want to do is go out and get a listing, right? So anytime you would get, and I'll probably use a different color here, anytime you would get a listing agreement, that would create an agency. Now, we sometimes refer to these as, we in the business, we call them listing contracts or listing agreements, but this is also, a seller's agency agreement. There's different ways this could be titled or referred to as. But when you get a listing on a piece of property, you're a new agent, your friend calls you up and says, hey, John, I want to list my home with you. And you're excited, and you go out and meet with them and take the room measurements, and maybe you take the photos, or you set up the photo appointment with the photographer in your office, and you get the room measurements and, you're meeting with them, set the price and do your price evaluation. And they sign the listing agreement. You've negotiated or told them what price they should list it at, and you've told them your fee, and they're signing that listing agreement right on the dotted line. Good job, right? You got your first listing. Well, when you have that listing agreement executed, you've now entered into this client-principal relationship, okay, or client-agent relationship. And so you now are going to have some obligations, we call those fiduciary obligations, to the seller. Now, what I want to remind you that a listing agreement, yes, creates this agency, but today we have what we call buyer agency agreements. And a buyer's agency agreement is very similar or just like a seller's agency agreement. Only difference is with a listing agreement, you're working for the seller, and with a buyer's agency agreement, you're working for the buyer. And in some states you could end up being what's called a dual agent. And we'll talk about this. This is a very complicated topic, so I want to walk you through it very quickly. You could also have, similar to a buyer agency, a tenant agency agreement. What do you mean tenant agency agreement? Well, I mean, in this example, you are helping a tenant look for property to rent. Now, we could flip that on the listing or seller's agency, and we could call that a landlord, right? You could be a property manager working for a landlord trying to help them lease their property. That's another type of an agency agreement. There's lots of types of agency agreements, but when you enter into one of these agency agreements, there are fiduciary duties that you owe. So let's talk about that right now, and that's where this COALD comes into play, and I have these for you in the book. The first one is care. By the way, my book, you can actually go out on Amazon and purchase, and I'll pull that up later, but if for those students, we have this available to download in your dashboard, and I'll show you where that's at. But if you prefer to purchase this on Amazon, you could do that as well. But up here in your dashboard, under, inside your, go back to the home button there. Inside, pressing too quickly there, I'm going to exit out. Inside your dashboard, there's a button right here called Additional References. And if you click on Additional References, you'll notice we have digital flashcards, we have worksheets, we have copies of the rules and regulations. I also have the candidate handbook. You need to download that. There's also the national textbook that I'm using right here, and lots of other information. We try to have a cheat sheet for each state, and when I say cheat sheet, we're not cheating. It's just like, here's what you need to know for the test. So all of that, again, is under additional references, okay? I just wanted to point that out so that you don't miss that. But you can also, if you don't want to download and print the book out, you can purchase it on Amazon. They will bind it for you and get it to you in just a couple days, so it's pretty cool. So let's talk about COALD, C-O-A-L-D. Now, remember, you go out, get a new listing, the sellers, your friends, sign the listing agreement. At that point, there's been an agency agreement created. Now, there's something you need to know for the test, and I guarantee you almost 99.9% of the time that you'll have one or two questions on this topic, so write this down. Agency agreements, whether it's a listing agreement with a seller or a buyer's agency agreement with a buyer, are between the broker and the principal or the client, okay? They're not between the agent and the client or the seller or the agent and the buyer. And you're probably saying, well, wait a minute, John. I'm the one that went out and got the listing. What do you mean it's not between me and my friends? And the answer is no. Agency agreements are between who? Let's see, that's right, good job. The broker and the client. You will see that on the real estate exam. I had to take my, I'm not supposed to talk about the exam, so I heard a bird that told me that, I'll just be on. I just got to be honest. I'm not reading any questions to you or anything, but I had to take my exam to keep my instructor license in a state. And it's interesting how they word these questions, because they worded a question, and I felt so like, you just felt so, you read the question and it's like, golly, bless his heart, he's pretty good friends with those people. And like they've been friends for years and years and years, and you just felt the salesperson, and you had a lot of compassion, and your heart went out to that person. But in answering that question on the test, I knew, and I want you to know, I don't care how sorry you feel for the agent or what the circumstances were or what happened, and you can say, that's not right. Well, unfortunately, listing agreements are between who? They're between the broker and the seller. Same way with a buyer's agency agreement or a landlord's or a tenant's. Now, I'm just driving that point home because they word these questions and you're like, well, golly, yeah, in that case, I definitely think the salesperson should be able to earn their commission. No, if they leave the office, they can't earn that commission because listing agreements, buyer's agency agreements are between the broker and the client. You'll see one or two questions on the exam about that. So you created this agency agreement. It's now signed. You've got your first listing, and it's between the broker and your friends, not you, okay? If you leave the office, sorry, the listing stays right where it's at, because agency agreements are between the broker, not you, the salesperson, between the broker and the client. Nobody's going to miss that on the test now, right? But I got to make sure you don't miss that one. So it's very important. So everything's signed, and now you have this COALD. It's an acronym, and it stands for cold. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one says you need to use due care. That's a little too large, so let me come back over here. Need to use due care. What do we mean by due care? Well, let's actually, let's talk about this for a minute. You need to, when we talk about care and your opportunity or your requirements as a real estate agent, you need to make or take care in doing things like making sure the room measurements are accurate, checking with the local zoning to find out how's this property zoned, possibly looking on the deed to see are there any other names of people who need to sign the listing agreement. I just closed a deal this week, and all I've seen on the contract and everywhere else has been one name. But on the deed that was transferred to my buyer, there were 6 people. There must have been 3 children and 3 spouses. And so we had to have some additional documentation. So it's your job to check that deed. Who all's on the deed? Sometimes someone will tell you that's just mine, and then you find out, well, they have 2 sisters and they both need to sign it. You need to, take the time and care to verify and make sure the information's accurate. Now, whether you're a seller's agent or a buyer's agent, you need to use due care in things like, what is the value of the property? You need to try to figure out, well, what's the value of the property? Good example, and I'm going to jump over here to the board real quick. Let's just kind of go out for fun, and let's go to Zillow. So I'm going to go out to Zillow, and I'm going to put in an address, and let's just put in 717 Ozark. Let's do this right here, this address right here. I have no idea. Here's the property right here. But notice what we have right down here from Zillow. We have what's called a zestimate, don't we? And so Zillow is looking at this property, and it's trying to figure out, what do we think the price is? So a zestimate, and they tell you what it is here, it's really just a computer trying to make a guess on what this property is worth. Kind of interesting, isn't it? There are many sources and places that are trying to figure out the values of property. Now, what's wrong with the zestimate? Well, it's a computer. It doesn't know if those people have 6 cats in the house, or doesn't know if they've totally renovated and remodeled the kitchen and just spent $40,000 on new granite countertops and professional grade equipment. Doesn't know all of that. We don't know that, do we, until you and I go and inspect that property. And so it's your job to, when we talk about care, is that property, what do you think it should sell for? We talk about that in chapter 16. If it's a buyer you're working with, you want to make sure the buyer is not paying too much for that property. So there's lots of things that you need to take a look at and be cautious with, and make sure that you're using good care when we go into with that property. So back to the board here. Notice, and I have here, the real estate agent owes due care to the principal while transacting business for the principal. And I give you some examples here. Examples of care. Remember which marker I'm using. Examples of care for real estate professionals would be gathering the information for the listing agent in a thorough, professional and thorough manner. The broker should possess the skill and knowledge regarding the real estate business to implement this issue of care. So lots of things can fall there. We could have room measurements, as I mentioned. We could have all kinds of things that pertain to the deeds, plats, surveys, lots of items that could, photos, we could go on and on. Just understand care is a requirement. Now, the second item that we need to understand is obedience. The broker shall be obedient to all, and let's highlight that, legal instructions that the principal would ask for. Now, if a broker said to you, hey, John, I do not want you to sell this property to certain types of people. What do you do in that situation? And you could see an exam question like that. You actually need to say, I can't do that. That's a violation of fair housing. If it was a fair housing issue they wanted you to violate. And secondly, you really have to think and ask yourself, do I want to take this listing? You don't want to do anything that's illegal or dishonest. Sometimes you'll have sometimes working as a buyer's agent, I've had buyers who wanted me because they had talked to a seller and they wanted me to write a contract, and this seller was going to carry a down payment, and they were going to pretend they were carrying a down payment. They were going to just tear everything up after the closing. And I say, no, I can't do that. And they're like, well, you're our agent. Why can't you do it? And I say, because it's against the law, and I can go to prison for that. That's called fraud, okay? And so they look at me a little funny, and I'm like, I can't. I'm not going to be involved in that transaction. That's when you have to just wipe your hands and tell them good luck, and they need to go somewhere else. But you only have to obey lawful legal instructions. So if they want you to hold their house open on the weekends, you need to do that. If they want you to have certain pictures, come back and take new pictures, any of those, you have to be obedient to their instructions, but only the legal instructions are required. Now, we're moving on. A is accounting. You have to account for all records and other valuables. And you can see keys, maps, photos, all of that needs to be accounted for. And I'm telling you what, sometimes those are areas that I see agents that they goof up, they lose things, so need to be very diligent there. And then loyalty. Let's talk about loyalty. When you work for your client, you have to be loyal to that client, okay? That's your client. Now let's talk about loyalty. A lot of times in real estate, and I see agents who just don't get this at all. I'm going to give you an example. I was showing a house to a young couple. This has been several years ago. And I'm a buyer's agent. So I work for the buyer. The other agent in the transaction worked for the seller. And I just asked the agent, and I knew my buyers loved it. I said, why are they selling? I'm just kind of digging around, asking some questions. And the other agent says to me, they've moved, they're making 2 house payments, and they need to sell this property really bad. Now, can the other agent give me that kind of information? To me, that's confidential information. The answer is yes, they can, if they have a document or something in writing from that other party that says it's okay. It's okay for you to tell people, I'm about to lose my home because I've been unemployed. It's okay to tell someone, we've had to move, we're making 2 house payments, and we can't afford both houses, and we're in an awful jam. Now, if they tell you and put that in writing that it's okay to tell that, that's fine. I don't think that happened in this case. The other agent was just telling me that information. Well, now let's go back and we're going to look at the last one here. We're talking about loyalty, but what's our last one? Disclose. Any information the broker knows or should know must be disclosed to the principal. Well, first of all, the other agent in my situation was not very loyal to their party if they didn't have this in writing. And I'm presuming, and I don't think they did. They weren't very loyal because they actually gave me what's considered confidential information. And now that I have this information, what's my requirement? My requirement would be I need to tell my buyers, remember I have a fiduciary obligation, me and my broker, to the buyers because I have a signed buyer's agency agreement. I need to tell my clients that, the other agent told me they own 2 homes and they're having a tough time making their mortgage payment. They could lose the property. Now, I've been giving that information. I have to disclose that to my client, which they made a lower offer and it was accepted. If the other agent had no, I don't know, but let's just say the sellers never gave the other agent that permission to say that, that agent actually violated the loyalty by disclosing to me confidential information. Does that make sense? And so, we have to really be careful when other agents are asking questions. We don't want to give information out about our party and about our client that could jeopardize their negotiating position. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I had a good friend of mine who's a great instructor, a great teacher, Bruce Eit, does some wonderful things with the Code of Ethics. He's a distinguished realtor award winner from the National Association of Realtors and recent Real Estate Business Institute Hall of Fame winner. That's what that little trophy is there. I'm a past recipient of that. Bruce is a great guy, and I heard Bruce always say this: if you wouldn't say it with your client and their attorney standing next to you, I wouldn't say it. Does that make, do you like that? In other words, if the other party or their agent is asking you questions about your client or the client's property, and you would not tell them that information if your client and your client's attorney were standing next to you, you probably shouldn't be saying it. I think that's great. So I wanted to give Bruce credit for that. But moral of the story is this: you've got to be really careful and cautious about your fiduciary obligations. And loyalty and disclosure are really issues you've got to be very faithful about. I could give you other examples on disclosure. I've seen situations where possibly an agent had an offer come in from one of their own buyers, and so they were going to get two sides of the commission. We call that double dipping. They were like a dual agent, perhaps. So they're going to make the whole pie, or the broker's going to make a portion, and they're going to make a huge portion. And there's other offers they know will be coming in, and they go and present their offer, get it signed, and never mention anything to their client that, oh, by the way, we're supposed to have two more offers coming in tomorrow, where the seller could say, well, let's just wait and see what those offers come in. That's where disclosure comes in. And, you're representing your client. Now, there's nothing wrong with if that situation where you have a contract and you've written it and it's your party, and you have been told you're going to get two more offers come in, there's nothing wrong with you. You need to present your offer ASAP because you have the offer. And let's say it doesn't expire till 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. There's nothing wrong with you presenting your contract as long as you say to your client, we are verbally I've been told we're supposed to have two offers come in the morning. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we can wait till tomorrow morning, but you run the risk that if you want to accept this contract, they could at any time before the acceptance withdraw their offer. We'll talk about that when we get into contracts. So, it's okay to go ahead and present your offer. You just have to disclose there could be other offers coming in, and it's okay for you to say, if you want to wait, that's fine. I just need to let you know that we do run the risk that these people could find a better home and want to pull their offer. And I've seen that happen a lot. So it gets very complicated and a lot of different things that can go on here. So, and I notice we've almost been on an hour, and I want to keep this kind of to the point and short, but I want to just recap here that anytime we get a listing agreement or a buyer's agency agreement, this agency, this word called agency, comes about. And when this exists, we have what is called a fiduciary. I'm a creative speller. I'll try to UCARY, a fiduciary obligation. When we talk about that, it basically means we have some duties and rights we owe that client, and that acronym COLD helps us remember that it's care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. So don't forget that. Okay, I'm going to see if we have any questions out in the chat world. While I do that, I'll put the Global Real Estate School support page back up and remind you that anytime you have questions, you can always go out to Global Real Estate School support. So there's my good friend Mike Reedman from up in Nebraska. Hello, Mike. And Rudy Wicks is watching from Festus, Missouri. Hey, Rudy. And Marissa is watching from freezing Aberdeen, South Dakota. She's one of our South Dakota students, so great. Michael's watching from Ozark. Thanks, I appreciate all of that. Always good I wanted to just check the chat to make sure everything was going fine there, so thank you for that. Okay, so hopefully you've got some good information there today. I'm going to do some more live streaming tomorrow for us on Friday as well, and we'll pick up on this agency topic. Again, this gets a little bit complicated. I want to make sure that you understand it, but please know that this fiduciary obligation is going to exist anytime that you have a listing agreement or a buyer's agency agreement. So important. Sometimes, and I just kind of want to mention this, I hear people say, you're going to learn that information in the class and you'll never use it. You don't know how many times I talk about my responsibilities and my fiduciary obligations and explain these scenarios about, the person you're hiring to work for you needs to have a good working knowledge of who they represent. They need to make sure that they're not putting you at a disadvantage. So this material right here we went over today works great in listing presentations or buyer agency presentations, and don't discount it in any way, okay? Well, I appreciate you checking us out here at Global Real Estate School. I'm going to go back out here, and I want to just quickly show you a couple of quick things on our website, if you don't mind, before you take off. So, because we have some really cool things that we're doing here. We are approved in several states, as you can see, Florida, Hawaii, Indiana. We work with another company out of Kansas and also South Dakota. We've got a lot of South Dakota students, so thank you. We're approved in Virginia, Oklahoma, Missouri. And then we also have some study aids that are very good. We have My Real Estate Exam Coach. This is a very cool program, and it basically is me giving you short coaching, concise coaching tips on how to pass the test, as well as some other information. I'll show you that here in just a minute, but really excited about that program. And then we also have digital flashcards you can buy. This is my brand new program called 5 Minutes to Jumpstarting Your Real Estate Career. And I'm telling you what, I was teaching a class yesterday to a group of brokers, last 2 days, from all over the country on starting a real estate company. And we were talking about training and resources that they felt agents should have to get their career off to a start. And it was so cool because everything they were mentioning is in that program right there. So let me show you very quickly about that, because I'm so excited about this. And I'll show you how the other program works very quickly. If you just have a couple of minutes, I'd love for you to see this. But I have a website called Business Tech Guy University. This is all of the coaching content here. So I start with building business planning And this is actually designed, you can take it on your phone. You have a book you can download. This is a book that I wrote, 5 Minutes to Jumpstarting Your Real Estate Career. But they're just short little snippets to walk you through and help you build a business plan. And, I mentioned this, there's lots of short videos with this, but one of the things I try to talk about and encourage people is the fact that, Starbucks knows how many cups of coffee they have to sell to break even. And so I shot this video out in front of Starbucks, just reiterating the fact that you got to have a business plan. And so, there's all kinds of resources. I actually walk people through creating a budget, and I talk to you about how to develop a budget, to be sure and plan for taxes, vacation, and a profit, and then how to know the numbers in your area. And so we walk through that. You download this spreadsheet. Once you download the spreadsheet, I then walk you through how to use the spreadsheet and how to find the numbers for your area. And when you get through with all of this program, now we can start to build and figure out, okay, what do you have to do to make the number of transactions based on the income that you need as a real estate professional. So it's a pretty cool course, and I'm really excited about it. And again, you can find that right here at Global Real Estate School. A couple of other things, we've got all of our videos are right here. This video will be put in a playlist here, so check that out. We do have our blog, and we try to do lots of information there. We have a podcast, so would love for you to check out our podcast. You can download it on really Spotify, Podbean, any of the platforms. And then we also have other resources. If you want to get a broker's license, if you need to get post-licensing information, all of that's right there as well. So globalrealestateschool.com. And do not forget to do what? Do not forget to go out, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click the bell. When you click that bell, you'll be notified each and every time we go live. And so thank you again for joining. I always enjoy doing some live streaming. I'm going to actually spend the rest of the afternoon working on the school. We've got some new items we're developing. We have a whole new course look and feel. Our courses, the content's still there. We're adding more videos and doing more things like that, but we're just changing the look and feel of the course player and some information, updating our practice course. So I'm going to get a cup of coffee and go back to work. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Have a great day. Thanks again for watching. My apologies for the mix-up at the beginning of the show, but hopefully everything went fine. Talk to you soon, and thanks for watching. I appreciate all the kind feedback. Bye.